Well, thank you very much, everybody, and good morning. And that was a fantastic introduction. And it makes up for having to follow such an interesting and inspiring presentation about saving young children's lives. So that's a really difficult one to follow, but I'm going to try. I'll do some introductions first, if I may. I mean, I'd just like to just explain what ground I'm going to cover. So some introductions, me and the company I represent, CGI, better known to you, to many of you, I guess, previously as Logica. Talk a bit about global context, the challenges governments are facing. Talk about international trends, how governments are responding to those pressures. Talk a little bit about some of the solutions that CGI can offer, and then give you some examples and case studies. And the main example is going to be from the UK, primarily because that's where I'm from. And also, I was working for the tax authority in the UK until September. So spent 37 years with the tax authority. That is a very long time, believe me. And but now working with CGI, and there's some information there about CGI's track record, and Logica is a very substantial one of working with government agencies all over the world. So that's me, and that's who I am. And my specialization, really, apart from sort of leading the debt management organization in the UK for quite a period of time, laterally was trying to develop collection strategy and using predictive analytics and bringing in the use of behavioral science, which I'll touch on in a moment, because my CGI colleagues say it may be more interesting to some of you than some of the other things I was planning to say. So I'll try and focus on what's interesting and maybe a little less on giving you information, because if I can interest you, then please come to me and my CGI colleagues for more information. We'll be very happy to provide it. I put HM revenue and customs bang in the middle of this slide. I make no apologies for that. Just some sense of the sort of client base CGI's got working on taxes and collections. So I'm going to move on then to global context. So the key message here is wherever you are, whatever part in the world you're in, if you're in government, you're trying to collect debts, tax debts, social security debts, whatever kinds of debts you are, you're not alone. There's some kind of dominating contextual themes worldwide, and virtually all of these apply to the UK, by the way, but they apply more generally. So governments across the world want to increase tax revenues. There are not very many governments want to do that by raising taxes. That's just a fact. Some governments also need to close very large public deficits. That is very, very true in the UK, huge public deficit. So the natural focus of government and of public servants is really to try and close the public deficit by reducing spending. It's much easier and it's more natural for people to focus on reducing spending than increasing revenues. So budgets are being cut, as they have been in the UK. Some debtors are becoming more aggressive, more difficult to collect from. Not all of them, but some of them. And meanwhile, lots of tax authorities across the world are improving their effectiveness in dealing with fraud. Their audit programs are becoming more and more effective and sophisticated. Well, with any audit program, you generate debt at the end. You generate all the tax that should have been paid for the last 20 years or whatever, and it's got to be collected. So paradoxically, sometimes when tax authorities are improving the effectiveness of their audit programs, they're also generating more debt, and that creates tension. So that is a bit of a vicious cycle. If you're not very careful, you end up with staffing in collections organizations and government being reduced, and the effectiveness of those operations being impaired at precisely the time you'd like to maximize their effectiveness, because if you can maximize their effectiveness, you can help the government, whatever government, reduce its deficit if it has one, and you can certainly help all governments raise revenues and have more taxes to pay for the really important things like the saving of children's lives, to put it in the most emotive way. So conclusion, governments have got to just move on with their collection strategies just to keep pace, really. And the good news is, yeah, sure, there are solutions, and you'd expect me to be talking about some of them. I will briefly, but I want to kind of illustrate that really with principles and themes. Now, what were the typical responses? Well, speaking from CGI, speaking from my own experience, across the world, North America, but through Europe as well, Australasia, and even, I say even, but also in South America, a big focus on improving operational capacity, not increasing staff numbers. In fact, in the UK, the opposite has happened. Governments insisted operational performance has improved, but constantly reducing staff numbers. Increasing use of analytics, big data or small data, but just data that organizations already have, to build predictive models and to guide collection strategies, to do the things that do work and stop doing the things that don't work. Use of behavioral science, I will touch on that a little later on, be using insights about the way ordinary people like ourselves behave. We don't always behave in completely rational ways. Sometimes we just behave like human beings. I know I do. So that is something I'll come back to. Automation, you know, of course organizations want to automate letters, they want to automate reminders and all of that, but also quite a bit of a worldwide trend to automating some enforcement actions. So some of the hard measures used to enforce payment of debts. Increasingly in some parts of the world, those are being automated too, as is data gathering, pulling in data about the debtor, doing that automatically, and also increasingly using self-service. So if somebody's got a debt, human nature again, but very many people do not want to phone the tax authority and ask for more time to pay it because the answer might be no, and that's a very tough call for them to make. Whereas if they can do that online, they can go online, set up a payment plan, it's much easier. And the really significant thing is they are far more likely to do it. That's the important point. Expanding cooperation and data sharing across different bits of government. I don't mean between governments, I mean within government. It's been a big theme in the UK. Certainly the government there is frustrated. So many different departments all don't seem to be sharing data and spending money to collect different debts from the same debtors who happen to own multiple departments. You know, why couldn't something be done about that? Legislative improvements, looking at kind of changing legislation that gets in the way of efficient practices and creating new legislative opportunities. They don't all need to be tough measures. It's not all about being tough, but just things to help people pay and improve the way business processes work. And also a big theme about consolidation, bringing government capabilities together in one or more single organizations rather than replicating functionality across different departments. So CGI's got a suite of collection products. I'm going to just talk about them very briefly. The primary one is CAXG. It's a case management tool. It does a lot of things you'd expect from a sophisticated a collections management tool. It automates, it programs next actions, it schedules calls. But the thing I principally want to focus about is this kind of capabilities a modern debt organization needs. So it needs if you look at the middle strand there, the business applications, it needs a case management tool, it needs an efficient a collection system, it needs business intelligence and decision management. I'm just going to focus on those two really because it needs to be able to use the data it's already got to determine what the next best action is. Now I'm going to just whiz through this one. CGI's also got a product, a decision engine called Strata. And the way Strata and CAX, the collection management, case management system works, is Strata does the segmentation. It's using the data that the organization already knows about its customers. It's segmenting, it's deciding what treatment should be applied to them, and it's then telling the case management system at the bottom what to do, what letters to send, when phone calls should be made, whether to ignore letters and go straight to a firmer action or to take a very soft approach. All those things are and what that loop is doing. And then the case management system is passing information back to Strata, which is evaluating the effectiveness of those individual strategies. CGI's got a model, a funding model. I'm conscious of time, just going to give you a flavour here of some of the, what was referred to earlier, the benefits that have been derived by governments across the world from simply improving their collection and assessment processes. And CGI's got something called benefits funding, where, and some of these organisations took advantage of it, where they don't pay for the cost. The cost of the project is fixed, but they don't pay the cost until their own auditors and analysts have certified the benefits. So I'm going to talk quickly about the UK. UK, big debt organisation and the tax authority, dealing with about £54 billion worth of new debt a year. So that's I think by anybody's standards, quite a lot of debt. That's about 10% of all the tax that should be paid on time in the UK is paid late. And the organisation's built around dealing with that, about 6,000 people at the moment. A UK deployed Strata, the decision engine I mentioned earlier, in 2013, and strapped it to an old legacy IT system that it couldn't at that time afford to replace. We hope one day soon it will. But it's been able to use Strata to make that a system work in a much more intelligent way. And the forecast benefits from that are getting on for £500 million worth of euros. And that benefit comes from moving a sort of set of fairly dumb, standard, repetitive debt processes applied to everybody, regardless of what the organisation already knows about them, to something that's much more smarter and fine-tuning responses and interventions according to what the tax authority, in this case, it could be any government body, already knows about its debtor. So the point about that little graphic is really just to say we think those benefits could be doubled if the Revenue Authority went on and upgraded its case management system. So there's some features of Strata there. I'm going to just go through those fairly quickly and just then talk about some of the collection strategies. So I mentioned earlier the use of behavioural science, and that's something that's been done in a number of countries, just using insights around how ordinary human beings behave. I'll give you the simplest example. One of the UK taxes, something like 10% of people don't pay on time. Really, really important to tell them they're in a minority of 10%. That improves response rates. If you can tell them that 9 out of 10 people in their town have paid on time, you get a better result. If you tell them taxes pay for schools and hospitals, you get a better result. If you can refer to schools and hospitals in their area, you get an even better result. You're making percentage improvements, sometimes as high as 20 or 30%, just by using the right message for the right person based on what you know about them. And these techniques can take account of all of that. You can look at their previous behavior, you can look at the size, age of debt and risk, you can look at their assets and liabilities, and you can take the right actions for them. Probably the most profound example in the UK, the biggest one, of a simple change to a letter was some of the most difficult debts we've got. The response rate to a particular letter was about 20%. The letter said, we've written to you twice before, you haven't replied, we're about to take legal action and we don't hear from you. HMRC put in a single sentence, and it said, we've written to you twice, previous occasions we assume you overlooked our letters, but if you don't respond to this letter, we'll assume you have made a deliberate choice that you don't want to engage with us. And that doubled the response rate, went from 20 to 40. So if you've got the capability to change your letters, change your collection strategies, eliminate ineffective actions, replace them with much more effective actions, and constantly change them, you can get very big benefits in terms of collecting tax faster, reducing your costs, and improving customer service, because you're doing the right things for that person. You're not wasting money taking ineffective actions. You're not taking tough action against somebody you ought to be taking a much softer approach to. And you're not wasting time doing things that aren't going to produce a result. So I think I've probably more than run out of time. Thank you very much for your patience, and thank you again.